Welcome to the Skeptic Canary radio show with Tom Williamson.
Good evening, everyone. It's the 21st. It is the 21st of May, even 2014. You are watching / listening to episode 55 of the Skeptic Canary show. I'm Tom Williamson from skepticcanary.com, and my guest this evening is Heather Doran from Aberdeen Skeptics. Heather, good evening.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, sorry about getting the date wrong there, but that was always a pitfall. That's always a possibility, sadly. So tonight we're going to be talking about what Heather does, which is being involved in science communication. Also might talk about her a bit about her history. She has a PhD in pharmacology. Like I say, she also runs Aberdeen Skeptics, so we'll have a bit of a chat about skeptics in general. But the first thing that I want to mention is that one of my little projects is a website called wisdomofchopra.com, which takes words from Deepak Chopra. Are you familiar with Deepak Chopra, Heather?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good. It takes words and phrases that he says, and it sort of sticks them back together in a not completely random, but that sort of like logical order, and it can come up with stuff that sounds quite profound, but sound completely nonsensical. So I've just brought it up now. Each of us undertakes exponential boundaries. Now it sounds very deep, but is of course totally and utterly meaningless. And last night, Lawrence Krauss and Richard Dawkins tweeted that they liked the site, as did Edmonton Oilers goalkeeper, or goaltender rather, Ben Scrivens. So yeah, and of course its mentions have gone nuts last night. So thanks to everyone who's been to Wisdom of Chopra and has tweeted about it and said nice things about it. Okay, if you want to get in touch with the show at any time, you can do. You can send us a tweet. I'm at Skeptic Canary, or you can email tom@skepticcanary.com, or if you've got my personal phone number, you can send a text. That may happen. Okay, okay, let's kick off things. Well, tell us a bit about your blog. You run a blog called The Science Tourist.
Yes, so that's actually quite a new blog that I've just started. I spend a lot of my time visiting things that are scientifically quite interesting, or places. Whenever I travel anywhere, I usually have a look on Google for things that might be more unusual to go and visit. So I thought I'd start blogging about it. I also go to a lot of science events and talks, and that's part of my job as well. So I thought I'd just start writing about that. Previously, I've got a blog that's still online, and I still write on there occasionally, which was about being a PhD student and working in science. So it covered more aspects of kind of developing as a researcher and the nature of being a PhD student, and also covering some of the work that I was doing during my PhD. But I'm doing things now, slightly different things now, so I thought I'd start a new blog.
Okay. So now, well, are you working in academia, or are you doing something else?
Yeah, so I work for the University of Aberdeen, and I work in the public engagement with research unit. So we work with all academics at the University of Aberdeen across all different subjects, to help them share their work with the public in whatever way or whatever the public might need. So lots of different things we get involved with, including organising events like Cafe Scientifique type events. So we do a whole range of series called Cafe Med and Cafe Scientifique. We run them in Aberdeen and Inverness, and there's a team of us that are in the public engagement with research unit doing that. And we also work with people on a one-to-one basis, and work and deliver some training at the university as well, and various other bits and bobs. Can't speak. Various other bits and bobs. So it's quite interesting because we get to see a lot of different things, meet a lot of different people, and help on a lot of different projects.
Okay, okay. Is science communication, is it something that you think a lot of scientists need help with?
Not always. What we try and do is look at, depending on what project people are doing, what kind of the nature of the research is, and look at ways for them, or options for public engagement within those projects that will help benefit them and their research, but also be good methods of communicating what they're doing. So there isn't a kind of a one-size-fits-all formula for any type of research communication. It can vary a lot, and also it varies on like funding. So if they've got funding, if they're looking for funding, who they're applying to, what kind of audience they want to engage with and work with. So it varies quite a lot. So we try and keep an overview of the landscape and things that are going on, and we work a lot with community partners as well. So we've already got those ties, so that when we speak to someone who's like doing a research project, we can say, well, have you thought about this or this or this? We also get quite a good overview of what other people are doing within the university. So we can say, oh, have you met up with this person? Have you spoken to them? It might be useful for you to do that. So we do things like that, basically.
All right, excellent, excellent. What sort of events have you run recently? I heard that you ran an event looking at the science and philosophy of time travel.
Yes, well, last night we had a Café Scientifique event in Inverness, in Waterstones, and we had two speakers, one from physics, one from philosophy, talking about the physics and philosophy of time travel. We did an event that was basically the same as that in Aberdeen in the last series of Café Scientifique. It worked very well, and so we did it again. We had the same philosopher speaking, but a different physicist this time, because the other physicist wasn't available for this one. But it was really good, and we had a lot of really big questions. So if you haven't been to a Café Scientifique before, it kind of works as a short talk, so about 30 minutes in length. Then we have a break, and then we have quite a lengthy Q&A. So it was about just over 45 minutes last night. Mm-hmm. And some of the questions that the speakers got were, can you, one of the big ones was, what is time? And another one was, can you explain the theory of special relativity as well? So it was kind of like, whoa. So putting them on the spot, but they did an awesome job, and it was really good. Had some really good feedback from the audience as well. So that's good.
Excellent. So I'm guessing that the audience didn't think that there was no point to philosophy then?
No, it was very interesting. We spoke through a couple of different paradoxes and how the possibility of parallel universes and things like that. And it was interesting. And each one, we kind of looked at it from the philosophy kind of side of things, and also physics as well.
Well, while we're talking about science and philosophy, there's just one person who I want to give a quick shout out to, and that's someone called Sir Russ, who came and left a blog comment about the show last week, where we were talking about science and philosophy, and it's a very, very long comment. It's practically an essay. I don't quite agree with what the guy's written, but I just wanted to say thanks for the guy for stopping by and sharing his thoughts, because I mean, philosophy and physics of time travel potentially, and things like different dimensions, they're things that, if they do exist, we're so far away from being able to rationalize them at all. But you've got to remember how quickly physics can move on. So when the Higgs boson was first theorized about 50 years ago, if you said back then, okay, what they're going to do in the future, they're going to build a 20-mile long tunnel underneath France and Switzerland and fire particles around it close to the speed of light, people would have said, rubbish, forget it, that's not going to happen. So yeah, philosophy is certainly important with trying to grasp things like the grandfather paradox. I believe that was one thing that was considered on the night, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I remember Jim Al-Khalili, who's written a book on paradoxes.
Mm-hmm.
He said something funny at the first QED. He said, "Why is it going back in time and killing your grandfather? Why don't you just kill yourself and that's that?" Which is a good point, I thought.
I was wondering that last night, actually. I was like, why is it grandfather and not father or mother or grandmother? Well, is the way it is.
Yeah, definitely. And there was a Harry Enfield sketch years ago after the Terminator 2 film came out. I mean, I'm sure everyone's aware of the plot where the Terminator goes back in time to kill the leader of the Resistance when he's a child. And in this sketch, he goes back to Edwardian times, I think it is, and tries to kill his great grandfather or something like that. Yeah, it's really good. But with your training as a pharmaceutical scientist, I mean that must tie in with skepticism really well, because there's a lot to be skeptical about in pharmaceuticals, isn't there?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the reason, the way I found out about the kind of skeptics movement is I was on holiday in the first year of my PhD, the only time you get to take holidays, and I picked up a copy of Ben Goldacre's Bad Science, and I read it, and I was like, this all makes sense. I've always been very, I've always questioned a lot of things. I've always been someone that has written letters to complain about stuff and questioning why people are selling stuff and things like that. So I've always done that. But what I didn't realise was that there was a network of people out there that were also doing this, and that people were also questioning things. So I joined Twitter and started looking at certain things and found out about skeptics in the pub, and I was like, this is fantastic. And I just moved to Aberdeen and didn't know many people, so I thought I'd start a group here with a friend of mine, so with Alan Hughes, and we thought, oh, we'll just organise one event, we'll see who turns up, see what happens. And we got 30 odd people there, and we were like, this is great. And we'd hardly advertised it either, so and people were Googling it and looking for if there was a Skeptics in the pub in Aberdeen. So that was back in 2010, and we've been running ever since. Alan now is involved with Dundee Skeptics, so he's getting that going with a few others. And I've been organising the Aberdeen Skeptics with Sonia Watson, who's a PhD student here in Aberdeen since 2012, I think.
Oh, right, okay. So when did you first become aware of something that's kind of bread and butter for skeptics? When did you first become aware of homeopathy? Probably really realised what it was when I was reading Bad Science, probably. Oh,
I think
right.
I'd already I just kind of dismissed it. I didn't think anyone paid any notice to it. I just thought it was something that Boots had or something like that. I'd never used it. I knew it was rubbish, but I didn't really understand what it was. So that's probably when I first realised. And then also kind of the understanding of how dangerous things like that can be, even though it's basically nothing. Mm-hmm. How damaging that can be if someone is going for homeopathic medicine rather than going to see, it's not medicine, going to like homeopathic remedies rather than going to their GP, or also the way that homeopathic things have been peddled in certain countries and things like that as a viable alternative.
Okay. Well, it's just Michael Marshall from up here from the Merseyside Skeptic Society. He's written an article that was just out today, called "Skeptics Will Always Face an Uphill Struggle Against Pseudoscience," and it's a very good read because it's essentially about rationalising why skeptics, why we do what we do essentially. So I was just wondering, as a skeptic, what's your inspiration? Where'd you get your drive from, as it were?
I'm not sure. I've never really thought about it. Like I said, it's always just been something that I have done and that I've questioned. And I think possibly from a kind of consumer standpoint as well. So if someone is trying to sell something to me, then I want to question that and see why they are doing that. And very kind of inquisitive about things as well. So I want to understand things. So why is this and why is that, and I don't know where I get kind of the drive from. One thing that I didn't realise, which actually the last Skeptics in the Pub that we had kind of brought home to me, is that maybe things haven't changed that much, and that the Skeptics movement, even though it's now called kind of the Skeptics movement, Skeptics in the Pub, isn't that new. There's always been people questioning things and questioning pseudoscience and trying to understand things and digging deeper and asking for evidence. We had a talk on witchcraft, but we had one on witchcraft, and then we had one on the Bronze Seer legend, which is it's a Scottish kind of prophecy-making person, basically. So it was all about the power of prophecy and foretelling the future and things like that. And actually, people in the 1700s, I think it was, were discussing things like this in coffee shops in London, and people that were linked to the Royal Institution, and they were trying to find ways of gathering evidence to see whether anyone can truly predict the future in a certain way, and so that they could either then prove or disprove that was the thing. So I thought, and even then they were discussing that the mere fact that they were looking into something that would be seen as being rubbish, and it would damage their reputations because they are looking at that and kind of questioning things. So I just thought it was quite interesting that things and people have been questioning things since that long ago.
Oh, definitely. But the thing is, I'd love to see a history of how skepticism and what we think of as skeptics has changed in recent years. Because
changed or not changed.
Yes. Well, the impression I get is that, and I could be completely wrong here, but the impression I get is that in, say, the 70s and 80s, the word skeptic was very much linked to skepticism about supernatural things.
Yes.
So things like folklore and psi abilities and that sort of thing. Whereas I personally got into skepticism more through my science background, and I was aware of it through creationism and the anti-vaccine movement, and it all comes under one big tent. But I'd love to see if people have approached skepticism in different ways over the years.
Yeah, definitely, and I think skepticism also exists across the world as well, in different cultures, but in different ways. Some of which, depending on where you are, might be more, for us, it's quite a fun thing to have skeptics in the pub. We are doing stuff, but it's an enjoyable event and things like that. And other places, I suspect it might be more of a serious kind of undertaking, and that there's discussions going on, whereas we kind of do it. We do serious chats as well, but quite often we can have a lot of fun with what we're doing, and we're free to question things and think about it, and look at what people are saying and look at evidence for and against things, which I think I think it's great. But yeah, so it'd be good to see how others do it, because obviously there's quite a lot of skeptics groups in America as well. They have quite different conversations, I think, to ones that happen in the UK, skeptics in the pub. Although I've never actually attended one, so I can't say for sure.
No, me neither, sadly. But for me, the thing that really drives me is things like the anti-vaccine movement.
Yeah.
Because kind of indirectly, that they do essentially kill people, you know.
Yeah.
If you encourage people not to get vaccinated, and people therefore don't get vaccinated and leave themselves and their children open to diseases which can be fatal, and are. There've been a few measles outbreaks up here in the northwest recently, and a few children have died. Yeah, so when something like that is at stake, that's when I get really serious about things, you know. But at the same time, I really don't want to be disparaging to people who are interested in other things, because as far as I'm concerned, there are many different ways into skepticism, and as long as the skeptical methodology is applied in all cases, whether it be to alternative medicine or conspiracy theories or folklore or whatever, as long as it's all applied and the message of skepticism is spread, then for me that's all good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree. And we do it because we organise the skeptics in the pub up here because we do enjoy it, and it's and we do have quite serious messages and talks. We have discussed how things we could be more active in Aberdeen, or question some of the things we see in Aberdeen, or beyond that. But also we do take a very open view. We have fun with it. So we've had nights with we've had Helen Keane come up and visit, which has been fab, and things like that. So it's been great fun. So we're trying to mix it up a little bit. And the last two talks that we've had have been a little bit different, because we've been looking at kind of historically. So we looked at witchcraft trials in Aberdeen, and we kind of took a look at as well what we do know about witchcraft in Aberdeen, and what actually is kind of myth and legend as well, and then discuss kind of the evolution of witchcraft as a thing, and how maybe things might have replaced that now, or why it was then, and all those kind of questions, which is quite interesting, rather than looking at something like an alternative therapy, not medicine or something like that. And we've looked at more evidence for and against. We've also looked at genetics and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I do think it's important, if I can borrow a religious phrase, I do think it's important to have a broad church, you know, because here at Merseyside we had a very good talk last Thursday. It was about something called the Angel of Mons, which was a vision that apparently appeared during the Battle of Mons during the First World War, and it's told in different ways. It's well, I won't give away what happens with the legend, because hopefully Dave Clark will give a few more talks. But some people saw it as angels that came down and attacked the Germans and allowed the British to flee, and it was fascinating. It was a fascinating mix of history, folklore, and propaganda, because he talked a bit about how the British used the legend of the angel in their propaganda, and it was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's good. I think the most interesting talk that we've had up in Aberdeen, well, not the most interesting, but the one that kind of sticks out in my mind was we had the chaplain, one of the chaplains from the NHS Grampian up here, speaking about the role of chaplaincy in the NHS.
Mm-hmm.
And the differences between, and there's quite big differences between how the chaplaincy works in Scotland versus in England and Wales as well within the NHS. So he was talking about that and the role that he plays and what he sees, what he does and things like that. And it was just a fascinating talk and a really kind of outline of how things. Sometimes skeptics kind of take things which are it's not an evidence for and against, and it's quite black or white what evidence is, what works, what doesn't work. But this one was very, very kind of, well, you're talking about people, you're talking about very difficult circumstances, and you're talking about support networks and things like that, and how these things all come together, and how the NHS works with the chaplaincy and things like that. So it was very interesting.
Okay. Well, one of the things we've talked about before on the show, which I'm just quite keen to get your opinions on, is the question of Scottish independence. Have you got a view, and do you think that there should be a sceptical angle on the independence debate?
I would really like to see, but this is kind of due to the nature of it, I think, is quite difficult to do, more evidence on claims that are being made on both the yes and no sides of the debate. And because of the unknown nature of the what will happen, I think it's really difficult to do. But I would like to see that, and would like to see people questioning things more. But it is difficult because there isn't necessarily an answer. So.
Yeah. So this is one of the opinions I've got with subjects like this is that there are certain things that you can be skeptical about.
Yeah.
Questions like, what currency will Scotland use?
Yeah.
What title will the head of state have? What form of government? That sort of thing. Those are all questions which you can ask and ask objectively, but you can have things which are more emotive, like you can have historical reasons for voting for independence, which are more difficult to get a skeptical foothold on.
I think it's very important to question any stats or figures or things that are put across when arguments are made in politics, which form part of an opinion that's been tried to put forward. And I think questioning those is important. So if so and so said this, and then you go, okay, so like what evidence have you got to back that up? However, it's difficult because once things have already been said, then they've already been said, and people have heard that, and it sticks. But it's good to it's very important to keep questioning that, so that people will know that people are watching and people are listening to what people are saying, and making sure that what is being presented is fact, or as close to the truth as is the truth, rather than twisting things to help their argument that they're trying to make. I think that's really important, and I think in this debate that's important, because there are so many unknowns that we're going into. The questions can't be answered. Yeah. Although if people are being definite about an answer, then you need to make sure that they are being definite, that they can take that position and be definite about it. So there's questioning that can be done there as well.
Definitely. Okay, right. We're about halfway through the show, so I just want to remind people how they can get in touch. You can email. I'm tom@skepticcanary.com, or you can send a tweet to @skepticcanary. Okay. So we're talking more about skepticism in general I think. And we've got elections coming up tomorrow, European and local elections. So
Yeah.
make sure you go out there and vote. Very important. But do you think that as a skeptic, it's possible for a skeptical organisation to endorse any political party, or do you think people have always got to go out and make their own mind up?
I would say it would be foolish for any skeptical kind of body or organisation to align with any particular party, because, or any particular person, because you'd want to, the idea would be for the skeptics to remain independent and have that position of questioning and analysing from a clear view of what people are saying on both sides. We did want to, actually going back to the independence, we did want to host the skeptics in the pub with someone who could take a viewpoint on what both sides were saying, whether that's yes or no, and look at what has been said, what can be backed up, or what is possibly still unsure. But finding someone to do that is very difficult, I think, as well, because it's so, there is a personal nature to it as well. So getting someone who really is independent to the debate is difficult.
Okay. I'm still trying to work out who to vote for, to be honest, because one of the nice things about the European elections is they use a form of proportional representation. So with most elections, well, with the UK general election,
Yeah.
sadly, it's very easy to think, right, well, we're using first past the post. We had a chance to change to AV after the last election, but it was rejected at referendum.
Yep.
So annoying. But with proportional representation, the smaller parties can get a seat. Unfortunately, that means that our current MEP is Nick Griffin of the BNP, but hopefully not for too much longer. So there's one party which always really frustrates me, and that's the Green Party, because a lot of their policies make a lot of sense, trying to create jobs through renewable energy, that sort of thing. But they're anti-nuclear and anti-GMO, and I don't know if they've changed their manifesto recently. But last time I looked, they were pretty pro woo, essentially pro alternative medicine, and that sort of thing. So it would be lovely if there was. I've no idea how this would work though. If there was some sort of evidence-based policy party, because sadly, in many ways, politics is very different to science. So for example, if a scientist changes his mind, that's a good thing. That's a sign of strength. But if a politician changes his mind based on new evidence, that's seen as weakness. So it's so frustrating, really.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is as well, evidence doesn't always match what the public thinks. So it's the nature of getting voted in as well. In order to make a difference, you do need to get voted in. In order to get voted in, you need to have people on your side. And if you're taking positions which go against the public perception, that makes things difficult. Not in all cases, and I know that argument is used quite a lot as to why people make certain decisions, rightly or wrongly, but that is also the nature of it. I think it's very important for the questioning part that skeptics play, because then that is a public perception, so people are then reacting to something that someone said and questioning them on them, and that may help, or possibly does help already, possibly, can help change how things are done, so they know that people will react and will ask questions when people are quoting things that might not be the right number or the right interpretation of what we've done. So I think that's important, and playing that role, I think, is really important for the kind of skeptics groups to do that. And also because I think they've got kind of this unique position because we've got skeptics groups across the UK. They're all essentially independent groups of people that meet up and listen to talks or look at certain things or actively go out to question what's being done in their area or nationally. So right from the local level, people can make differences which can filter through to kind of a national impact, maybe. Maybe that's being optimistic about how things are, but I think that's probably the best way of kind of tackling it.
Well, I think it's very, very interesting because we had some people from Edinburgh Skeptics on a few shows ago, and their attitude to the independence referendum is we just don't talk about it because it's too divisive. And I thought that was quite sad. But do you take a similar view in Aberdeen?
I suppose I'm English, so that's kind of a controversial. I don't know. It's not controversial.
But do you still get a vote as a Scottish resident?
Yes.
Yeah, well, there we are. So you have the vote, so you're allowed an opinion.
I don't find it as much as a personal thing as others might, rightly or wrongly again, but that might have a reason to do with it. But like I said, we did want to have a discussion about it, and we wanted to make sure we had the right speaker for it, because a lot of the debates and conversations that I've seen or heard about happening are people's personal opinions one against each other, and I don't see the value in that on that scale. So I didn't want to. We didn't want to do anything along those lines. If we could find someone who could take an independent stance on it and discuss clearly what's being said on both sides, then fantastic. But as of yet, I haven't found that person.
Oh, right. Okay. Let's talk a bit more about the public perception of science, because there's been one group on Facebook that's very much into spreading the good word of science, and we're not allowed to swear on this show, so I won't say its full name, but I'll just abbreviate it to IFLS.
Yeah.
So have you seen those guys, and do you think they've got the right attitude?
Yeah, I mean, I do follow their Facebook, so I see what they post on Facebook. I know that they do have a blog now which has got further information and things like that on it, and I can't say that I've really read any of that content. Some of the things they share are pretty funny. I don't know, there's obviously a line on copyright and things like that they're shared, because it's not their content that they are sharing, it's other people's content. So that might not be a good thing all the time if they're not linking back to original sources. But it gets people excited about science, so that's good.
Yeah, definitely.
I know some people question that what they're sharing isn't science, so I know that's a bit. Well, even though this is science, then maybe it's not science. But how do you define that? Don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that they put up today, which is a long-term interest of mine, myself being from a yeast background. Although the yeast they've posted about is very, very different to the baker's yeast I studied. It's something called cordyceps, and cordyceps are nightmarish, to be fair. They are parasitic fungi that have the ability to hijack other organisms. I mean, the organism they parasitize is very, very specific, and the example they've gone for is one that infests tarantulas, and they will infect the tarantula and then completely take over its body and then start growing.
Yeah, is this the video that they posted?
Yes, they've put a time lapse video on. Yeah, so I do a talk called Yeast Man's Best Friend, but it's not always if it's a cordyceps. Oh, that's terrifying. Although sometimes they don't quite get things right. I remember they posted about how different tears crystallize in different ways, and I know someone who's a crystallographer, and he got very angry about that because
I suppose that's a dangerous thing when anyone has so much influence and they are talking about such a wide range of things and sharing things from a wide range of subjects and sources and things like that. How can they make sure what they're sharing is real and is what if it's based on, if it's something linked back to science rather than just an image or something like that they've got it scientifically correct rather than just sharing things for the sake of it. So it's an interesting thing. Also, I find it's very difficult because on the Facebook group it gets so many comments, so many likes and things like that. If you were to question anything, it just gets lost in the amount of stuff going on. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, 15 million likes. I mean, that is a huge audience and a huge amount of potential outreach. I find that amazing. But as far as I'm aware, it's just one person who decided to start a science group one day, gave it a provocative name, shall we say, posted a load of cool photos, and the rest is history, really.
Yeah. I'm just looking at one. I've just got it up on my iPad, and one of the posts was 43 minutes ago. It was posted, and already it has 1,697 comments on it.
Yeah.
Which is just incredible, but yeah, the amount of influence that the site has is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's not exactly much room for any one-on-one communication, is there?
No.
But yeah. So what else is on there? Because I think it's great that people do have an interest in things, and they seem to have a lot of stuff about 3D printing, which seems to be what's going to take over the world in a technology sense, anyway.
Yeah, a lot of the content that they share isn't that new either. It's things that quite often I'll see things and think, oh, I've seen that somewhere, because I've obviously got an interest in science and things that have been shared online, but the way they're sharing it is reaching kind of brand new audiences that wouldn't necessarily have interacted with when it was shared on a such and such a site previously. So it is really good, and I know that they share things from other sites and do link back to. So I know one of the people here in Aberdeen had some of their images in the Wellcome Trust image prize that runs every year, and they shared those on the website and linked back to them. So amazing that they reach that many people through that website.
Okay. I mean, if it's getting kids interested in science, then even better. I mean, do you do much work with schools at all?
Not kind of personally. We do as a group. So there's various things that do happen with school groups. There's my colleague Rhiannon Thompson runs a Cafe Sci Junior, so with researchers going into talking schools. I have done schools things in the past as well, so I'm kind of registered on the STEM ambassador scheme and things like that, and I've done work and workshops with school groups in the past. So do a bit of school.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Have you got any opinions on how science is taught in schools? I don't know if you've heard of Michael Gove's upcoming reforms to not just science teaching, but teaching in general.
Yeah. So again, it's very different in Scotland to what it is in England and Wales.
Oh, you're very lucky.
I went to school in England, so I did my A levels in England and things like that. So that was the experience that I went through. But here in Scotland, there's a new curriculum for excellence that's in place, which is very different to the English and kind of A level system. So they're encouraging integration between subjects. So things aren't taught standalone is the kind of theory behind it. So you don't just teach history on its own. You can teach some science within history as well. You can teach other subjects within history. So things aren't separate. So that's coming through at the minute, and there are a lot of reactions to that, and we could speak about that for a long time. I think it's good to have a mix. Not everyone is there's not one way of teaching that's right for everyone. I suppose what people are trying to find is the way that's best for most people. But I think it's good to mix it up. Practicals are good. They're good to do stuff. If you want to continue and do science, then you will have to do practical work. So getting experience of that seems worthwhile. But I'm not a teacher. I don't have a teaching background.
Oh, right.
I have taught work with undergraduate students, which has been fun.
Cool. Well, one of the things that really annoys me, and I know really annoys a lot of people about what Michael Gove wants for education, is he wants to go back to a 1950s style where education is, here's a bunch of facts, learn them, and then you'll be tested on them. And it's just, science doesn't work like that. Science isn't just about learning facts. It's about, embracing the scientific method and learning things for yourself. So
my experience of even working with undergraduates who were studying for degrees in biological/medical sciences is it's very difficult to grasp that unknown question, so that you are working to test something that is untested. No one has looked at this before, and you don't know, there isn't a correct answer to what you're doing. You are looking at the unknown, and I think people can find that quite hard to grasp. So maybe more to kind of answer that question and get people thinking that way might be interesting. But that's also where, kind of going back to where we started from, you're talking about philosophy and things like that. I had no idea what philosophy was. I had no experience of philosophy. I had 2 friends at university that were studying philosophy, and that is the first time I had come across philosophy. And it's only possibly in the last 2 years, a year, that kind of got an understanding of not a good understanding, but why it is relevant and things like that. And actually, those kind of questioning and thinking and stuff like that is really relevant and can maybe help people as they go on to think scientifically as well about questioning things and looking at questions, and that there is the unknown, and that you are testing things that haven't been looked at before.
I just think it's amazing, because I've demonstrated to undergrads as well, how they can go through a scientific education up to degree level and not get that the fundamental point of science is to test new ideas and to find out new things.
Yeah, and that may well come from that nature of, this has been discovered, so this is this. And now, so you ask the question, so what is the answer to this? And the answer is this, because so-and-so found this, and that's how it works. And
well, last week I ended up with two philosophers on the show for the last half hour, and they had two different views on one position, and
okay.
they were really going for each other. It was some sort of a philosophical boxing match about to break out. But one of the things I didn't get to say is you have the philosophy of science, and you've got two schools of thought. One's called empiricism, which is what most people go by now, and the other one's called inductivism. And the main difference between the two is that in inductivism, if you have a hypothesis, you test it, and if your hypothesis passes the test, then you assume that it's true, and you assume it's true until something comes along and disproves it. Whereas with empiricism, as practiced by Karl Popper, who only died in the 90s, so it's not like this is that new an idea. The idea is that if you test the hypothesis and find it acceptable, then you tentatively accept it, and you're prepared for that hypothesis to be disproven at a later date. And going back to physics, this happened with gravity. Newtonian gravity as a theory is very, very different to relativity. But a lot of people really struggle with the idea that Newtonian physics is wrong. I mean, how do you tell someone that small things aren't attracted to big things when it's probably what they've been told all their life? But but whether you go with empiricism or inductivism, that's philosophy. That's philosophy about science, and I just wish they taught that sort of thing at school. I think that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well.
No, I think so as well. It kind of, yeah, and like it just makes your mind go though. Like I couldn't sleep last night after listening to the talk on physics and time travel, both the physics and the philosophy. I was like, oh, what is time and how? Yeah. I don't know how philosophers ever get to sleep.
Oh no. Yeah, it's again, I've had a little bit of experience of GCSE philosophy, and my wife did it. My wife Celia, sorry, a slap on the wrist. Celia did a degree in philosophy, and she said that she came out with more questions than she had when she came in.
Yeah.
So
I can say the same about my PhD as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did you find the PhD experience? Was it something that was very worthwhile? Was it really tough? I mean, if you could go back, would you do it again?
Yes, it was tough, but I learned a lot. It was a great chance to explore lots of different ways of working, like on a personal level, because you've got a lot of freedom. You're the person managing your PhD. You've got your supervisor, whether they are a micromanager or kind of hands-off. Mine was fairly hands-off, so it was good for me to kind of work out ways that I like working, basically. And I found it very interesting. Sometimes means you get kind of, you don't escape from it because you want to kind of explore more and kind of find the answer to a question, and it makes it incredibly frustrating when things just aren't like working. Like if you've got an experiment, it's just not working. You're trying to figure out why, and it's not. You spend a lot of time not getting the results because you're trying to work out how to do things, and that's frustrating. But also kind of it's challenging, so it makes it worthwhile. And other aspects of it are mind-numbingly boring. So you think, why am I doing this? Why is this part of a PhD? But that's the nature. You kind of have a whole scale of things that you need to do, and also to explore different things. So public engagement. I did, it's not a course, it's a competition called Biotechnology Yes, which was one of the most intense 2 or 3 days of my life, where we worked with a group of people and speaking to people about enterprise and things like that. You got to meet a lot of fascinating people through conferences and through work you're doing. So, and I also was a co-editor, although I was the editor, but a co-founder of a science magazine in Aberdeen as well. So that was a great learning experience, and I met a fantastic group of people through that. So that was really good fun. And I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't done the PhD. And learned a lot of stuff. And then, yeah, doing the PhD, it was good. It was tough, but good. Excellent. So yeah, I'm glad I did it. I quite enjoyed mine. I really liked my supervisor. I really liked the lab that I was in. It wasn't all yay all the time. Writing my thesis was boring. I didn't enjoy that, but you do it, and it's worthwhile in the end. So I think.
Well, I can certainly say that mine was worthwhile. I certainly wasn't happy whilst I was doing it, and I'm not in academia at all anymore. I'm a web developer. I make websites for a living. But yeah, you certainly learn a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think you learn a lot about yourself as the process goes through, because you go through the different stages and you have to deal with certain. Every PhD is different, but there are a lot of common things between different PhDs about what you have to deal with, and especially when it comes to the writing up process and things like that, and the discipline you have to do with yourself, and how to deal with yourself when you just can't bear to write anything, or your mind's just wandering elsewhere, and getting over that.
Yeah, certainly. But the thing is, no matter how tough it gets, I've never met someone who's got a PhD who says it wasn't worth it, you know?
Oh, really? I have.
Have you? Oh, okay. That's blown my conceptions out of the water. And on that cheerful note, it's 8 o'clock, and I think we've just about come to the end of the show. Well, Heather, what we'd like to do just before we go is give our guests the opportunity to plug anything they want to. So if you've got any events coming up or any websites that you'd like to mention, feel free.
Actually, I'm going to give a plug because Sonia and myself are going to be doing a talk at Skeptics on the Fringe in Edinburgh. So I think that, I haven't got any of the details yet. So I think the date is going to be the 12th of August, and we're going to be doing looking at some crystal healing and things that are going on with crystals and rocks, because there's been a few things happening up here in Aberdeen, so we're going to be talking about that, and we haven't confirmed our blurb yet, but we will be doing something along those lines. So I'll give a plug to that, because that seems kind of appropriate for this. And yeah, if you want to come to Aberdeen Skeptics in the Pub, Google Aberdeen Skeptics in the Pub, and you will find our website, and you will find out all the information about all the events that are coming up. We're a friendly bunch, and so just come along to our next event, which isn't in the diary yet, but will be very soon.
Fantastic. So if you're in Aberdeen, go to Aberdeen Skeptics, and if you're in Edinburgh this summer for the Fringe, check out Skeptics on the Fringe. Okay, and with that, I think we are out of time. Thank you for joining me this evening, Heather Doran.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much, everyone. I will see you all next week. Bye.